What's up, coaches? You're listening to the United Basketball Plus Coaching and Leadership Podcast. I'm joined today with Luke Gromer. Luke, how you doing?
Good, Jacob. Thanks for having me, man.
Glad to have you on. For those who don't know Luke, he is the founder of RYG Athletics. He's a Nike Sports Camp director, an advocate for youth sports, and the host of Better Coaching Podcast. So, Luke, what has your path been like? What led you here? What made you the person you are today?
Yeah, we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. To make a long story short, my life was very shaped in two places as a young person. It was shaped in sport and it was shaped at camps. And I got into teaching coaching after college, started in college, just got bit by the bug. Got plugged into some awesome basketball camp organizations as I was also starting to teach and coach full-time in public schools in Northwest Arkansas, where I'm located. And then ended up launching some of my own camps locally. I'm really inspired by my time working camps with PGC basketball, integrating a leadership and mindset curriculum, using this classroom court combination, just a passion to use sport to develop people, not just better players, but better people. And throughout that too, just a huge passion for coaching and helping coaches get better at it. I think my journey is actually a little bit unique in the sports space in that the worst thing I can say about one of my coaches growing up in my time through sport, playing multiple sports through high school, the worst thing I can say about any of my coaches is great dude, just not a very good coach, which I think is unique. A lot of people have some really negative experiences with coaches throughout their athletic career. And I was really fortunate to have a lot of really good coaches, a lot of good people, and then some really good people and really good coaches paired together, which I think is the secret sauce when you have an amazing person that also is a skilled coach. And so it doesn't take a lot of time in sport to quickly identify and see how impactful that is. The coach is the one delivering this experience, and they're the one that shapes it for the athletes participating. The better the coaching is, the better the experience usually is for the athletes. There's obviously other factors involved, but the coach is, in my opinion, the biggest driver and shaper of that athlete experience. So just developed this passion for coaching, started sharing content around it. And then again, like I said, I'd simultaneously started some sports camps locally, grew those, brought those under the Nike Sports Camp umbrella. Last summer, we served 420 kids. We do basketball and volleyball camps. This summer, we'll serve somewhere between 800 and 1,000 kids in basketball and volleyball camps as well. And it's an avenue where we get to help kids grow at something that they love and care about, and also get to use these modern coaching ideas that I'm passionate about. And hopefully in the process too, these athletes that are experiencing our camps, they're going to become coaches someday, and they're going to coach differently because of how they experience this camp, or the coaches that come work our camps see another way of coaching that hopefully they take back and apply to their teams and in their communities. And so the larger vision for RYG Athletics is to restore joy in sport one camp at a time. And we want to see athletes have the best week of their summer while they get a lot better. And then we want to see, coaches experience these camps too, that take that and are better for it, and ultimately better serve athletes in their communities and on their teams.
That's fantastic. Like yourself, I grew up playing a lot of sports. I found a lot of joy in it. My brother's not that much younger than me. I got a lot of joy from being able to play sports with him, and then turn around and watch him have joy going and playing in college. And like yourself, I too had some great coaches, some great moments, but then there's a lot of moments too where it was like, man, that soured my opinion, which led me into coaching. And I think a lot of those moments are why we're losing participation. When you hear the phrase restore joy in sports, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I guess you have to start with the problem and why you would need to restore something. You only need to restore something if it's been broken or lost. The number one reason kids quit playing is because it's not fun anymore. I'll share a quick story. I was at coffee this morning with a guy in our community. Hadn't met him before. Some mutual connections, went and sat down, and I was sharing a little bit about the camps and my work in sport over the last decade and how we do things, and some experiences in the youth sports space. And he starts telling me about his fourth grade daughter's experience this last year in the local youth league on her school team. Our kind of region has a youth basketball league that operates, and it gets organized kind of by schools, by feeder schools. And so this daughter of his, one of his 5 daughters, is playing on this 4th grade team, and the coach of this team only wanted to take 8 girls, but the high school varsity coach in this program told the youth coaches, no, I want you to keep 10. I want you to have 10 girls on each team. And the guy coaching this team is one of this guy's friends. And the first practice, he shows up with his daughter, and the coach says to him, hey, your daughter really shouldn't be on this team. I only wanted 8 girls on this team. So one, it's like, geez, man, that's setting the tone for it. And then the season goes on, and there's multiple games where his 4th grade daughter plays 0 minutes, and lots of other games where she hardly plays at all. And unsurprisingly, she's not excited about basketball anymore. Doesn't know if she wants to continue to play. And it's worth recognizing that, like, age, stage, context, they matter. Every context is different. We can't necessarily put blanket statements on what works here and there. But in a community youth league, there's no reason that should be happening with a 4th grader. And a big factor in that is just how we have let organizations or individual coaches define success in this youth space, particularly. Like, success on that 4th grade team is just that all the girls want to play again next year. And so the high school varsity coach needs to communicate that down. This is what matters. I want as many girls as possible to love basketball and come play for us in junior high and high school. And the organization running these leagues needs to structure it in a way that facilitates that too, that has a clear definition of success. So it's not hard. The organization could establish some rules around playing time, right? Take it out of the hands of the coaches. So those coaches that really what they care about primarily, like this guy, obviously what he cared about most was winning 4th grade girls basketball games. I'm just going to say that again. He cared a lot about winning 4th grade girls basketball games. Put boys in there too. It doesn't matter. It's a ludicrous statement. It is not very important. It's not important at all. The important thing is they fall in love with sport. They learn to be active for life. They learn how to become great teammates. And maybe the most important thing is they fall in love with the process of getting better at something. That only happens if you love something and you want to come back to it, right? But to sit her at the end of the bench because she's not as skilled as the other 8 girls, like, no wonder she's going to quit. So redefining success is essential in this, and communicating that, structuring it too, to where, hey, the league, the organization, we set the bar for what success is. Success is about retention. Kids come back and play again. So let's create a league that facilitates that. Kids want fun. They want to play. No kid enjoys sitting on the end of the bench. The 10-year-old is sitting on the end of the bench saying, like, why don't I get to play? Why doesn't coach like me? Right? The things that 10-year-olds think, like, I'm not good enough. All the messages that they're hearing, that obviously, why would they continue to play this sport if we've allowed this structure to be in place that facilitates that? So I think that's one of the core aspects of it, is the definitions of success are unclear or not set or communicated, which often just leads to this overemphasis on winning at these youth levels in particular. As you hit junior high, high school, school ball, it becomes different. Recognize that winning becomes more important. Totally understand. I've been in those contexts. Winning matters more there. And there's kind of a natural progression as they age to where, yeah, playing time probably needs to start to become earned, et cetera, right? Like, I recognize that context matters and it changes, but we need to get more clear on what success looks like at these different ages and stages. And even at these highest levels, junior high, high school, college, winning shouldn't be the only measure of success. There's got to be more to it than just that. The impact that we have on them and the retention of the athletes in those programs is huge. So yeah, I would say that clearly defining success. And the other thing that I just think is really, really essential is that we do a better job at the youth level scaling and segmenting sport. Scaling meaning making the game developmentally appropriate to their age and stage. 8-year-olds should not be playing the same basketball game as 18-year-olds. Why are 3rd graders on 10-foot hoops? USA basketball doesn't want them on 10-foot hoops till 5th grade. Europe, they're playing with a mini basketball till they're 8 years old, right? And like the Spanish model, go look at that, how they're scaling the game. There's a reason the NBA is flooded with international players yet, because other countries have figured out better youth development pathways. And even though they have less kids participating, they're producing a higher quality of athlete because their youth development model is better. They've scaled the game to actually fit the child so the child can have success, so that the movements that they're actually using are more like the movements they're going to use as an adult, because the equipment, the size of the court, the ball, the hoop fit them. And then the other thing is you got to segment the sports better. Below 6th and 7th grade, I'd say below 7th grade, segmenting just by grade is a huge miss, because you have sometimes an 18 to 24 month gap in grades, right? You've got the really old first grader and the really young first grader, right? And one of them is 18, 19, 20 months older. They shouldn't be playing in the same league, right? You should use an age-based segmentation system that caps it at a year. So that kid that's old, even though he's in first grade, he might play with the second graders because that's where his age aligns with, right? Like that alone just creates a better level of competition, which leads it to a better experience. So if you actually scale it, hey, the equipment fits these kids, we segment it right, we've got them with the right age bracket of kids. It's not going to be perfect. Sure, some kids might need to move up even beyond that if they're really skilled. That's great. You can have that conversation, but throwing it into a hodgepodge of like, whatever grade they're in, when that can be a massive range, leads to a lot of negative outcomes. And it leads to a lot of coaches with really short-sighted thinking of like, well, this kid's really good, he's going to help me win now. The reality is he's just older. Like he's not more skilled, he's just older. Like I've coached kids like that. They were big. They hit puberty early in 7th and 8th grade. And coach puts them down in the post to help them win games, but then they don't grow any. And in 9th and 10th grade, they need the skills that a guard has, but they don't have that because they were stuck down there to get rebounds and win games. And it's just short-sighted and not what brings enjoyment to the athletes. So that was a long answer, and I went a lot of different places, but that's the core of it. Can we scale and segment these sports? Can we redefine success? And the last piece, we don't have to get too deep into it. Can we actually train coaches on what effective coaching looks like at these ages and stages, and how to run better practices that are more fun, and how to have a transformational impact on the athletes that you're coaching?
Loved everything that you said there. I was taking some notes as you were going through. I think we'll touch on some more of those points as we go through this discussion. But yeah, I totally agree. Having youth coaches put their egos aside and saying, well, this isn't the national championship. I'm not going to go down in the Hall of Fame because I just won a 3rd grade basketball game. As a 3rd grade coach, we're supposed to help those players find a love for being on the team and enjoying what they're doing. So that's the state of youth sports, is that we're slamming these kids, we're telling them to specialize, and maybe to encapsulate everything, putting the cart in front of the horse. So then as they grow up, reports have been coming out that an alarming rate of athletes are burning out, quitting, or emotionally checking out. But is this a new issue, or have kids always quit sports at this rate since the dawn of sports, and we're just now concerned about the rate that kids are dropping out?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm necessarily an expert on that question. I actually think what's really interesting is, the 70% of kids quit sport by the age of 13 stat. That's kind of been thrown out there for a long time. I even used it in the TEDx talk that I gave back in October, before I'd come across some new information and depth into that stat. And I wish I wouldn't have used it because it lacks quite a bit of context for where that stat actually came from back in, I think, like the 80s or 90s. There's a guy on LinkedIn that did a deep dive into the stat, trying to find the primary source of it. I can't remember his name. I can look it up later and share it. But essentially it was like, this stat is not necessarily accurate. But what is true, and there's recent data that came out from Project Play on it, it's like only, I think it's 58% of kids are involved in sport. I think they've got a goal to get 63% of kids engaged by 2030. So I think maybe my thinking has shifted a little bit from like, this dropout rate. It's hard to really know what that is. There is kind of this natural progression as kids get older, and some of it's good. They decide what they're interested and passionate about, and depending on your context and the place that you are located, playing multiple sports all through high school, it might not be realistic for you. You might have to choose when you hit that 13, 14, 15 age range. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You should do it intentionally if that's what you decide to do. And the biggest thing is the kid should drive it. The athlete should drive it. What do they want to do? Mom, dad, take a step back. What do they want to do? And coaches, communicate that to your parents in your program. Hey, this is your kid's experience. Let them drive it. Let them decide what it is they want to do, how long they want to do it for. So I think maybe a better shift in my thinking, how I'm starting to think about it, is, hey, how do we get more kids involved, and how do we keep more kids involved? Instead of looking at how many are dropping out, well, let's look at how many can we get, how many can we keep, right? And that will obviously impact the dropout rates. But yeah, there's so much to that, and I think it's probably nuanced, and again, depends on the context. I do think, and I am passionate about that, I think a major factor in why kids quit is the experience they have with the coach that is leading them. And if we can have better coaches kids will have better experiences in sport. And Joe Ehrman is one of my favorite voices in the coaching space. His book, Inside Out Coaching, I think is a must read for any coach that is serious about using sport for more than just winning and transforming lives. But he says to be a better coach, you got to be a better you. And there's so much truth in that. And it's where it starts with a coach resolving that they're going to go on their own journey, become a better version of themselves and exist to serve their athletes, not to transact with them or use them. And so, yeah, I know that's not necessarily maybe the answer you were looking for, but I think the focus should be more around how do we get more kids involved and keep them involved. And I really believe the core of that is better coaching, better programs. I know another piece, and I'm not equipped to tackle all of this and an expert in that, is access. There's kids that don't have access to it. Cost has become a barrier for a lot of kids, and there's communities where they just don't have access to it. That's something else that needs to be tackled. But again, I'm not an expert in that. Or do I even feel like that's something that I necessarily can tackle with my current life context? But yeah, it's a complicated issue.
No, I would agree with you, is that if our focus is on how many kids are dropping out, then we're completely missing the aspect of how many kids are participating, because the dropout rate could be 30% of 100,000. That's 30,000 kids. We still have 70,000 kids who are participating, whereas 20 years ago, maybe that was half.
Yeah.
Our focus should be on, like you said, the retention of players. How many kids are retaining and enjoying it? And to your other point earlier about structuring and scaling, we mentioned this or we were discussing this before we hopped on the live here. Love volleyball, I just wrote down, is a top-down organization where you have the opportunity to go professionally, but then they scale it all the way from the youth to that final end point. And I think a big point there, to a couple of points that you've made, is that they coach the coaches, egos aside, and we're here to help the youth develop from point A to point Z. So I had a lot of notes here in what I wanted to talk about, and I just want to, as we've been talking, I want to kind of sum them all up with this current culture. And we're really, at least from my standpoint, really focused on basketball here. I think that's the one where kids get a lot into social media, rankings, and this recruitment culture, specialization, year-round competition. They'll go back as far as third grade, maybe, I don't know, third or fourth grade, and say, okay, here's your class of 2046 rankings. So sports are much more than just playing basketball. But kind of something that struck me, and wanted to get your opinion on it. Do you think that many kids are performing more than they're actually playing? In other words, are they, I guess, performing rather than participating with their teammates? That makes sense.
Yeah. Is it about being seen on social media or getting some outcome more than being in the moment and playing and enjoying it? Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
Yeah, probably some. I think we all recognize as adults how social media has shifted and influenced young people and changed childhood in some significant ways, most of which I don't think are very positive. There's a good book, I'm still working my way through it, called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I think it's worth a read for any coach that's leading young people today. And it's looking at why are these young people that we're leading so anxious, and what is the impact of smartphones and social media been on that. And yeah, the societal cultural data that we're seeing in young people right now is alarming. And I think sport is part of the antidote to it. And I think even in the book, Haidt would make the claim that it is as well, and that sport are these in-person embodied experiences where humans are face-to-face interacting, which kids these days need more of. And yeah, it's this place where they can invest in the process of growing and becoming, and relationships and those skills as adults that we know they need. And at the same time, your question is real. It's a real concern. Well, like, are kids just playing, participating to raise their social status, to get paid NIL money in college? Maybe some. Yeah, probably. I hope not. Some of that comes from what the values of their home are, the values of their family are, their parents are hopefully instilling in them. And then hopefully what the coach is creating too. The coach is creating an environment that is about more than just basketball, and it's an environment that values team and teamwork and selflessness and values and qualities that are going to serve these young people beyond just basketball. Yeah, sport has got to be a platform to help these young people become great adults. And the stats say that almost none of them are going to play in college, and even fewer will play professionally. And so we should also have honest, frank conversations with parents and stakeholders about that. Like, hey, this is the reality. Most kids' journey is going to end at the end of high school or sooner. Okay, so why are we investing all this time and energy into it? It's got to be about growing them for life beyond this. Because if it's just about chasing a college scholarship, like, this is a bad investment of our time. Not that many make it. You know what I mean? It's just the odds aren't good. And so, and with the athletes, I think we don't want to crush their dreams. We want to encourage their, if they have a dream of playing college basketball, let's help them try to accomplish that dream. Have honest conversations with them. What are your aspirations versus what are your current habits? Do your decisions line up with your aspirations? If you want to play college ball, are you putting in the time, energy, and effort to make that happen? We should help them there. And I think we can have honest conversations with them too. Of like, hey, the reality is most of us, the game is going to stop sooner than later. And who are you trying to become? Who do you want to become? What kind of work do you want to do? How do you want to be an awesome member of our society and your community? So yeah, again, I guess that's a long-winded way of not really answering the question, other than I think it probably is a factor and it depends. And as coaches, I think if we're going to impact it, we've got to make the sport experience about more than just the sport and about more than just the next level and being seen in some sort of social light for what they can do with a basketball or whatever sport they're playing.
Big takeaway that I got there is the relationship. You said it a couple of times, relationships, whether that's the player-parent relationship, whereas the parent have an honest conversation about the future and goals. And if they want to play in college, let's foster some sort of situation where we can potentially get there. But yeah, sit down and talk reality. What happens if you don't get there? Other relationships, as I put on my high school me hat as an athlete, and what kind of relationships I had with the player and the coach, the player and my teammates, player and my opposing teammates, officials and parents. What kind of impacts should players be receiving from those relationships?
Yeah, I hope it's one that helps them thrive in sport and life. I referenced them earlier, I love Joe Ehrmann's 4 questions for coaches. Why do you coach? Why do you coach the way that you coach? How does it feel to be coached by you? And how do you define success? I'll share a quick story about why I coach and the vision I have for the relationships that I'll have with players. When I was a junior in high school, my soccer and basketball coach, actually, I'm sorry, when I was a freshman in high school, my soccer and basketball coach called me over to sit down next to him on a bench during soccer practice. And I wasn't very good at soccer, but I went to a big soccer school in the Kansas City area and all my friends were playing. So I decided to go out and play in high school. They needed a few more kids to fill out a JV roster, and I end up out there and I'm not very good yet. And I'm sitting on this bench at practice and he starts to give me a vision for the kind of player I could become. Hey, I think you can play this role as you get older. You can do this. This is how you can help. And this is who you can become. And the crazy thing is that the exact thing he told me as a little freshman happened as a senior. I was playing in that role that he said he saw me growing into. And Coach Chug is his name. Had a huge impact on my life. He's a huge reason that I wanted to coach, am coaching, had a super strong relationship with him, the kind of coach where I could go ask him about life things that I was working through as, a pubescent teenage boy, a safe place where I trusted this man and desired his wisdom as I was trying to become who I wanted to be. So yeah, he cast this vision for me. And then I played for him soccer for 4 years and basketball for a couple of years of high school. And yeah, he had these deep relationships with his athletes, and we competed and won at a high level at the same time too. And what's really interesting is he retired about, I think 7 years ago. It was right after my oldest son was born. And we happened to be back in Kansas City for a weekend, and he had his retirement party and I got to go to it. And I walked into the gym in this school that I graduated from, and this cafeteria gymnasium was filled with a couple hundred people that he had impacted. It was filled with his former players, former assistant coaches. It was filled with the kids of those former players. And it was just filled with a bunch of people expressing gratitude to him for the impact he had made on their lives, me being one of them. And so for me as a coach, that's the vision that I have too, that someday at my funeral or at some retirement party, there's a room filled with people that are grateful that I was a part of their journey and are in a better spot in their life, career, relationships because of the relationship we had or the lessons I imparted to them, the time I spent with them. So I tell that story to say, I think it's essential as a coach to have a bigger vision for why you're doing this. And in those moments that you can chase, because when you think about that, it puts your daily decisions in perspective a lot, what you're going to prioritize and what matters and how to handle these relationships and valuing that above just the wins and losses of it all. So yeah, the core of what I believe a transformational leader and coaches is they're a servant. They're there to help others grow and help others become who they're meant to be on their journey.
So coaches have a huge impact on the athlete. I think there's two forces that really pull the athlete one way or the other, and that's the relationship or the experience with the coach and the relationship or experience with the parent. And I thought that was a fantastic story because I know there's a lot of people who coached me, and when they retire, I know that I'll be at their retirement party because they had huge impact on why I'm doing this today. So as you think about that coach and who you just talked about and maybe other coaches that you've had, just name a few behaviors that those coaches had that build joy. What are some behaviors that coaches do that really build joy?
Yeah, here's the first one. They shut up. They stopped talking so much and they let us play. Practices were representative of the game, and we actually played and competed the games. Our practices were fun and enjoyable. It wasn't just like do a bunch of boring stuff and scrimmage for 10 minutes at the end. Like get that garbage out of here. Like let's play the game and get better at it. So I had some coaches that were, I would say, ahead of their time in their approach to practice and development, and then they invested in a relationship. I had a high school basketball coach who cooked pancakes for us every Friday morning, like before school. Hey, show up and I'm going to feed you and we're going to hang out and talk. I had coaches that, had intentional one-on-one meetings with us as players. I had coaches that were willing to listen to me as a player when I came to them and shared an idea or a thought or a frustration. Yeah, it was just baked under this level of care. And I had coaches that noticed progress. I think it's one of the superpowers of coaching. It's just noticing progress. Hey, you did something that you couldn't do previously, or you're better at this today than you were yesterday. I see you working at this. Those things are super powerful. I mean, athletes lock onto those things and they don't forget them easily when you notice their progress. It can be verbal. It can be something like giving out some sort of cultural artifact or award. You can get creative with it. The other thing that several of my coaches did too is we would have a team retreat where we went away for 24, 36 hours as a team at the start of the season and spent time together, had fun, laughed, talked about the season, etc. Those are a few things that come to mind where I'm grateful that I had coaches that were intentional.
And I think when coaches do those things, they're going to get more out of their athlete. You as an athlete probably poured more into the sport, into practice, into the game, into really dedicating yourself to that because your coach poured more into you. He cared more about you as the person than Luke can put 20 points on the board, and that's what we need to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason Watson is the women's volleyball coach at the University of Arkansas. I recorded a podcast with him a few years ago. It's still one of my favorite conversations I've ever had with a coach. He shared this simple framework that shapes their coaching philosophies on his staff. They want to be good to and good for every athlete that they coach and lead. Good to them in the way that they treat them, that relationship, good for them in the way that they develop them as a person and a player. And I think like that's the core of it. Like, can we be good to these people? Can we be good for them? Because they're people in front of us too, right? I mean, I have multiple kids now. I want good people coaching my kids. And I think the highest compliment that I could pay to another coach is, I want my kid to play for you. Like that, as a parent, right? Like it just hits different when you have your own kids. And to see coaches, like, I would love it if my kid played for you because I know they're going to have a blast. I know you're going to grow them as a person. I know you're going to encourage them. Like those are the things that I want for my own children.
So we've looked at the coaches standpoint in the athlete's life. Now, flipping script, because you mentioned a couple times you have young kids. Let's look at the parents. Because like I said, it's a two-sided coin. There's the coach on the one side who's trying to build and instill joy for the sport. And on the other side, that is the parent who could either help build that up or erode that joy for the sport. So as your kids are getting older, and piece into your perspective here, how can parents support their athlete without being overwhelming?
Yeah, that is hard. It is hard for sure, man. Yeah, again, I think most parents are doing the best they can with what they know. I also think it's worth stating that I think the percentage of crazy sports parents out there is lower than the percentage of good sports parents out there. But the crazy ones make a lot of noise and they're very memorable when you have negative experiences, right? But there's a lot of good ones out there too. So I think that's worth calling out. How do you be supportive without overwhelming? I think it comes back to what I shared earlier in that you have to recognize this is their journey, not yours. And they've got to own it and they have to want it. And it's okay if your kid does not want to play a sport. People ask me all the time, oh, you want your boys to play basketball? I said, I don't care. If they want to, yes, I'd love it. It would be fun. And I've coached my oldest in basketball now, just a rec league. And I ask him, hey, do you want to play again? Yeah. Do you want me to coach you? Yeah. If he ever says, no, I don't want to play, or no, I don't want you to coach me. Okay. We'll move on from it. That's okay. And so I think it's letting them own their journey, right? Letting them go try other things. He's playing baseball right now. He wanted to, and he wants to play soccer again in the fall. Great. Let's just sample it and try a bunch of different things and figure out what you love. And I'll be supportive of that. Yeah, this is not my journey. You don't have to love the things that I love. You don't have to become exactly what my vision of your life is. And then when it comes to, practices and games and how do you engage with your kids around that, one of the things that I've tried to be intentional doing is just asking my son if he wants to talk about it. So a game ends or practice ends. Hey, do you want to talk about it? Sometimes he says no. And I say, okay. Sometimes he says yes. I say, okay, what do you talk about? Sometimes he says, what did I do well? I say, oh, I saw you do these things well. Sometimes he says, what do you think I need to do better? I say, well, I think you could do these. But he asks, right? Like that's a different approach than your kid gets in the car and you're like, you've got to do blah, 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 blah. And that's just, hey, take a step back. Just you lower your expectations and pressure around it. They're going to feel that difference. Get curious about it. Ask them. Let them lead the experience. And the other thing I would say is, man, don't undermine their coaches. My son's currently playing, like I said, rec baseball. And in my opinion, the coaches care too much about winning 7-year-old baseball games. And my son is not going to hear me say that because I don't want to undermine the coaches leading that team, I can have that conversation in private with my wife, but I'm not going to say that in front of my kid or talk badly about his coaches in front of the kid. Now, if my kid is being harmed, sure, intervene. Yeah. But I think being really mindful of how, as parents, we talk about the coaches that our athletes are playing for is important. I think it's easy for parents to just be really flippant with how they speak about coaches who are giving their time and energy to these things, often for little or no compensation. And that rubs off quickly on the athletes and how they talk about and to their coaches.
Yeah, I'm not a parent, but I know the one thing that I would do when it comes to leading my child in athletics is exactly like you described, and that's how my parents were.
Same. My parents kind of stumbled into it. They accidentally did what all the research said was really good sports parenting. I'm super grateful for it. It's why I love sport and why I'm still engaged in it.
That's right. I went to my parents, I think, with a flag football sign up. There was one thing I got into T-ball that they wanted me to be in T-ball, and I enjoyed it. And they were young parents, so I think they were trying to, they build some relationships with other kids and them sure. Build relationships with parents. But I think I took the flyer for flag football and said I wanted to do that. Spurred my football career. And one of the things I talked to my brother about is I never quit a sport. There was one day I almost quit football. So like you said earlier, we segment kids into, okay, we were 5th grade sport. Now we're 6th grade. This was 7th and 8th grade football. So I was a big 7th grader, and I got to the first week of hitting practice where we had full pads, and I was going up against basically full grown men. They were 8th graders. And on a Friday, we knew it was going to be one of the hardest days of practice. And my mom went to take me to practice, and I said, I don't want to go. I don't want to play football anymore. And I had all my gear and I said, I want you to take this and give it to coach. And she said, no, if you don't want to play, you're going to have to tell him that. I'm not you. I don't know why you don't want to play anymore. You have your reasons and you can stand and tell your coach that. And that terrified me more than actually doing it. And
Well, good on your mom for not rescuing you, you know? She was like, okay, if you want to quit, go quit, but you got to own it, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's healthy.
Yeah. The main point is they never pushed it. They were, if you're going to start something, finish it. If you don't want to finish it, you have to own that and admit to it. And that's on you. And I really respect and enjoy how my parents handled my athletic career, my brother's athletic career. Never pushed into travel sports or anything like that. If we wanted to do it, they would pay for it. But, you know, there was other stipulations and things that you had to accomplish to make sure that you could continue to play sports. So moving on here, loving this conversation. Coaches who are evaluating themselves and wondering, what do the athletes think of me? Or if they know that there's things that they can change because they want to bring more joy into their program. What are 3 to 5 things coaches could implement immediately that would start to restore joy for maybe specifically for their program?
Yeah. Number 1, ask. At the end of each season, we did a postseason evaluation where we asked kids for feedback. What'd you enjoy this year? Specifically, you know, in different categories too. What was the highlight of your year? Was there anything that you didn't enjoy this year? What did you enjoy about practice? What did you not enjoy about practice? They're going to give you some good data there, right? So start there, start asking. I'll add into there, maybe that's number 1. Number 2 is meet one-on-one with your athletes. That's a great place to ask that as well. Get feedback. You've got to be open to feedback and changing and growing and experimenting. The third thing I'd say is you need to have practices that are what the research calls representative learning design, that what happens in practice looks like what actually happens in a game. And so it is about, like if we are coaching basketball, I have yet to see a basketball game be played without defense. So we do things with defense in our practices. And so we use small-sided games, we do advantage games, we use constraints to constrain the offense or defense to make it harder or easier, right? And it's not super complicated. It's like we play one-on-one, but we give the offense an advantage. Or we play one-on-one and the defense can't use their hands. Or we want our team to get better at handling pressure, so we put the offense at a disadvantage. We play 3-on-4, right? Like it's not rocket science. It's messier. Doesn't look like a pretty practice like coaches grew up experiencing probably, but it's what actually is more enjoyable and leads to greater development and transfer to competition. So ask, meet one-on-one, have representative practices. I would probably add in there, and I mentioned it earlier, like observe more. Speak less. Try to lower the amount of time that you are talking during a practice and increase the time on task of your athletes, as many as possible, as active as possible, for as long as possible. Again, context matters. You might have a practice the day before a game where it needs to be a light load, et cetera, right? Coaches can make those decisions on their own. But as a general rule of thumb, I want athletes to be active and to get tons of reps and make lots of decisions so they can actually get better at what they're going to experience in the game. And then I think I would say the 5th thing, again, to circle back to something I said earlier, is notice progress. Celebrate and notice progress. So at my practices with any team or at the camps that we do, we have daily shout outs where we're going to celebrate and notice progress of athletes in front of everyone. And then do it individually too. Just go notice progress with, hey, I saw what you did. That's amazing, right? I love how you're getting better at this thing. Stick with it. We need that encouragement. Kids need to know that they're seen, they're actually getting better, that you're invested in their development and improvement. And when you wrap that all up in the bow of a commitment to transformational leadership, of I'm here to serve these athletes, not have them serve my needs, but I'm here to give and to help them grow, I think that's where sport becomes more enjoyable for the athletes and the coaches too.
Completely agree with that. So putting your coaching hat back on, if you took over a struggling program tomorrow, and in the context of how you describe this, it's either youth or high school, whatever program, if you took over a struggling program tomorrow, what is the first thing, your number 1 priority that you would do?
Great question. I got this from JP Nurbin and some of the stuff he shared around Captain Abershoff's book. I can't remember the name of it, but this captain turned around the worst ship in the Navy and it became the best ship in the Navy. And I would do the same thing that he did. I would meet one-on-one with every athlete and stakeholders too. And I would start to build a relationship and I would ask a lot of questions. Tell me about the experience in this program. What do you want it to be like? If you were in charge, what's the number one thing that you would change right now? So I would invest time and energy into the relationships and getting really, really curious about where things are and where people want them to go. And then the second thing that I would do after that is I would set a clear vision and start communicating that like crazy. Vision and values. Where are we going? What is this becoming? And what matters here? And I would communicate those like crazy, and I would come back to them all the time.
Throughout this discussion, I've been thinking about Kurt Signetti in Indiana, and that's the number one thing that he talked about. Is create this vision, and you were going relentlessly attacking that. So as we wrap up this conversation, which I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, I think it'll help coaches put a lot of things in perspective. One final question for you, and that is, what gives you hope about the future of sport?
Yeah, it's coaches that care. Yeah. And it's kids falling in love with the game. It's it's adults that are committed to doing what's best for kids, and coaches that are committed to using sport to shape lives and communities in a positive way. And then the most motivating thing is the joy on an athlete's face when they fall in love with the sport and feel themselves get better at it.
Fantastic stuff today, Luke. I was taking a lot of notes. Hopefully, if coaches are listening to this, they're not driving, they're writing things down. If a coach listens to this and they want to get better as a coach and as a person, and they want to reach out to you and talk more to you, learn a little bit more, maybe attend one of your camps, how could a coach reach you?
Yep. I'm easy to get in contact with. I'll share my email address and then a couple other websites they could visit if they want. You can reach out to me directly, luke@rygathletics.com. Just shoot me an email. Would love to connect with you. If you want to see some of the resources that I've shared over these last 5-6 years, you can go to bettercoachinghub.com. Weekly newsletters there. Plus, you can find links to the 135 podcasts or whatever it is that we've pushed out there. And then if you're interested in learning more about the Nike sports camps that we operate, you can go to RYGAthletics.com. You can see a list of the camps and the locations that we're operating at. And if any coach is interested in being on staff for a camp, hey, come be a coach with us for a week. We'll pay you to do it. Take care of lodging if it's not in your community. Yeah, just email me and I'll send you the staff application link. And then if there's any coaches that are interested in exploring leading a camp in your community, directing a camp, maybe at your high school or at a community center or rec center facility in or around your community, you can also reach out to me directly as well. And we can explore if that makes sense for your situation and ours. And we love serving kids through this camp context. I love that camps, we kind of strip away a lot of the stuff that produces anxiety in sport. Playing time's not a factor. It's not about wins and losses. It's just an environment where we can serve kids, help them grow and get better for this week of time, and teach them some stuff beyond basketball too.
Love it. Luke, I hope a lot of coaches reach out to you in relentless pursuit of excellence. Loved our conversation today, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk.
Yeah, you're the man, Jacob. Thanks for asking, and appreciate what you're doing to share with coaches and help them grow.